All right, first up on the mark for today. You can't see my head, I'm sorry. The main attraction is the pistons. Get this DSS Racing box opened up. We have our DSS Racing piston rings, which are marked top, second, and oil rings for the people that don't know which orientation they are, so that's good. We have our locks for our pistons. And here are our DSS Racing pistons. And the wrist pin that I dropped. I don't see anything damaged. That could have been bad, but everything's all good. Those slide out sometimes. But this is our DSS Racing forged piston. It does have a little dish to it, so we can run some pretty big cams in this one if we really wanted to. This one's getting a Whipple blower anyway, so we're not going to do anything too crazy. But I'll get the pistons laid out here. That's our box for DSS. That's all of our pistons. All right, throw those to the side. I'll go ahead and take the wrapper off of them. We'll let them sit out and be all shiny. They're going in the motor today anyways, so that doesn't matter. And then I'm not sure if you can see on the video beside me, I have my Proform ring filer. Which is what we use to file our rings, get our gap set right. So there we go. That is what our pistons look like that are going in this engine. Shout out to DSS Racing for hooking us up with these pistons. And for FRP for, of course, coming together with the kit. Next on the list is we're going to get the rods unboxed, and we're going to get the crank unboxed. Jump to our rods first, our connecting rods. Right. We got a box. We're a box inside of it. We're a box in a box. And this is serialized, so we have a serial number on our rods. And then we'll double check the serial number on our crank to make sure that it is the correct balanced assembly, 65518. So they are balanced together. These are our high performance forged connecting rods. And here what our HPM rods look like. Very nice, very strong, and ready to go together. So we're going to get these laid out as well. Normally we use Manly, Wiseco. It kind of depends on what the build is and what the overall goal is. Race Tech pistons we use a lot with Molnar rods. This assembly for the stroker specifically is a little cheaper, and we do offer a more expensive stroker than this, but depending on the goals of the customer, they may not need that expensive stroker. And then we're going to go ahead and open our box with our crank. So I'm going to leave it like that, walk you guys around. So here's our rods, here's our pistons, and here is our forged Eagle crank for our 426 stroker. It is balanced already, which is what these holes are used for, is balancing the crank. And you can see here, some of it's shaved off, which is where they balance the counterweights for the stroker, for the rods and all. So everything's ready for this one. And then behind me, as we can see here, here is our engine block. Fresh from the machine shop. I'll spin it over so you can see the beautiful part and not the bottom side of it. I was doing some work on the bottom side, so that's why it was upside down. But here you go. As you can see, all of our silver plate honed. Not sure if the video is picking up the cross hatching as well as it's showing on our side. But the engine block's been jet washed. Everything's good, clean, so everything's ready to go back together. So now we're gonna getting started filing the rings. I don't know why I just stuttered just then, but we're gonna get started file fitting the rings, getting the pistons assembled, and getting the pistons mocked up in the block so we can get this whole So we're gonna go ahead and get the pistons and rods assembled so we can get the rings on, get the crank in the engine, or in the block. Right now, all I'm doing is taking the rods, lubricating, putting it inside where the piston goes, sliding the wrist pin in, and then these are utilizing these kind of locks. So you have to actually have the snap ring pliers. They're snap rings, and you have to go inside and squeeze them and put them inside of the sides of the piston, which I'm going to do now. Alright everybody, so welcome back. We've already got most of the pistons assembled. I paused here on piston number 8 because I'm going to kind of show you what it is that we were doing when we were installing. So, and here's the wrist pin that you saw that I was sliding in and out, if you could see in the video. And then you saw the tool I was using. These are snap ring style, so these are doubled. So there's 2 on each side. The way you orientate the rods for these specific pistons, or pretty much any piston you see when you're putting them in the motor, a lot of people ask if there's directions. So what you're going to look at is the edges here and the edges here. So I'm going to get a little closer. So if you see this, there's a little bevel here. They call it a chamfer, however you want to pronounce it. And then the other side is flat. Flat sides go towards each other. So in referencing to pistons, you see flat sides would touch, the bevel is going to go towards the crankshaft. Reasoning for this is because there's little ridges, which I'll show you in just a second here. I'll to this crank. So little bitty ridges right here. So you see this is all flat. The edges, it's beveled up. So the piston's backwards. When you're, it's gonna These pistons are going to end up having created on the flat side, and you're going to pistons because you're going to send metal through your motor. So per the instructions, a little different on DSS's site, but there's an easier way I'm going to. So how you're installing the rings on these pistons, of course, because the wrist pin sects where your oil ring goes, there's a lock that has to go in here. It says to do that last. I do them first. So you're going to see here, there's a little, pick it up, there's a little right there, a little bump. That bump is going to go gap. So put it on first. You're going to try to line that up as best as you in that little slot. Slowly. Now these are not piston rings the way I'm working. They're a little more flexible, but you still have to be careful to scratch the pistons. So once you get that there, you're going to flip it over. Make sure that the little bevel, little nipple is there. And take something that's not too sharp. I'm not going to scratch it. I have this little pick. And I'm going to just press that all the way down. So what this does is make sure your oil ring pop out a little groove. Now the next step is going to be installing oil ring. So this little corrugated little, and that slides right in. This is not going to be the same, mostly for your strokes, the bigger strokers. This one is a 40 stroker. So then we're going to take one of our oil rings here. And you know, oil rings are usually something on it. I was just make sure it was off. You're going to slide that on the bottom spot of that lock that we just put in. Just like that. And if you see there's a top of this piston, that's because you have intake and exhaust valve reliefs. So these have to sit this direction. It can't sit that direction. So that's direction, rod's direction. So I set these rods to the specific piston going into the specific cylinder. And if you see, whenever I do the rings, when I file fit them in the cylinder that they're going to, because sometimes they might vary very slowly. Like I'm talking about like 1,000. Sure that you know you're file fitting the rings to that. They normally don't, but they can. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go over to the block, and I have this. So the one on top here is my second ring. Second ring, pull out my top ring. The orientation does matter. So on these, my top ring's nice and shiny. My second ring's gonna be darker. You're gonna see on them, sometimes they have marks, sometimes they have little bumps. That has an N2O symbol, which goes up. So I'm gonna put that on the second ring. On this side, so I'm gonna put the other opening, the ring gap, on the opposite side. Same thing, the N2O symbol up. Put this in here, and I'm gonna slowly work it around. If you do this too much, you'll break the rings. Just like that. That's how you put the rings on the piston. So our next step, our pistons are fully assembled. Which you can see here. There's all of our pistons for the stroker kit. Pistons, rods, everything, rings are on. Our block is over here, ready to go. Everything's been torque plate honed. All of our rings are file fitted. Our crank is over there. So now I'm gonna flip the block upside down, and we're gonna go ahead and get the crank installed. So we can go ahead and measure our bearing clearances and make sure we can get everything assembled. Let's go ahead and jump in.